Hey guys, it's Monday night. It's 5:31. So we're going to talk about placement of reward in our training and how we can do that better. So once you've logged in, just let me know that you can see me and hear me. I'm going to try to grab the YouTube link for anyone that is interested in swapping over to that platform. Someone said something. Hello, people of Facebook. Excellent. You're coming in, your comments are coming in. This is a good thing. Okay, here comes the YouTube link. Hi, Katie. I'm gonna hop over to Facebook and make sure those people also have the YouTube link in case it's not coming through on the comments. So just give me one moment. Yay, I'm glad your exam did not take long. But I'm also happy that you made it here. All right, as soon as I make sure that the links are posted everywhere in the appropriate places, we will get started. And feel free to share the YouTube link with anyone you think might want to join us. Excellent. All right. So we're here. Everything seems to be working. If Facebook quality is, did the link that I posted come through on the comments here? Does everyone see that? But if the quality is too bad on Facebook, a lot of people last week said swapping over to YouTube made it a lot better. So that might be a good option. I'm just posting the link in one more place. Perfect. All right. So now I'm going to get rid of this. Okay. All right. So first, hi, Marion. Marion's joining us from YouTube. So first things first, this morning, my FDSA workshop on weave pole problem solving opened for registration this morning. So working spots sold out, but auditing is unlimited. And with a workshop, all students get to ask questions as long as they are asked within the dates of the workshop. So this workshop runs June 28th through July 5th or something like that. So as long as you watch the presentation and ask your questions within that time frame, you'll get answers to those questions in my feedback presentation. But even if you can't participate during the week that the workshop runs, you will have access to the material for at least 1 year. I did recognize some names on the list of registrants already, so that's really exciting for me, and I'm happy you guys are going to join me for that. Second thing, and because it's relevant to this conversation that we're going to have tonight, is my webinar with FDSA next Thursday on all about marker cues and which reinforcement strategies that I find the most applicable to my agility training, how I teach them, how I apply them, and also just going over some troubleshooting that comes up when we talk about marker cues. Okay, and so tonight's chat, we're going to be a little bit more into the application of those marker cues, not so much the teaching. Yeah, I think, and Christina's saying that YouTube is much better. So I will make sure that you always get the YouTube link and just go there. I think Facebook is making it a little bit tricky because they now have their own Zoom room, and I think Facebook's trying to keep everything in-house and doesn't play nice with these third-party apps. That's just my feeling. I have zero proof to support that. But I think YouTube is more flexible in using outside tools. So if Facebook is giving you trouble, swap over to YouTube. Works the exact same from my end. Okay, so we're talking about placement of reward. And in general, I think of either rewarding from my hand, rewarding on the line, or the reward being pre-placed on the line. And basically the difference between dropping on the line and being pre-placed on the line is the dog knows it versus the dog doesn't know it. So when I'm pre-placing a reward, I'm more likely starting with a pre-placed reward as a lure, and then as the dog learns the behavior, I can swap the function of that reward from more of a lure to more of a distraction. For instance, my current reinforcement strategy for teaching 2x2s is to use a pre-placed dish from the get-go, from the very beginning. And when the poles are open, so when I start 2x2s, it's like a channel, so it's just pole and a pole, and the dish is right there. So at that point, the dish is just serving as a lure to get the dog between the two sticks. But as the poles rotate and I start to turn the poles to their traditional orientation, their competition straight poles, now it's a bit of a distraction. But I rely on the reinforcement history of going between the two poles to override the distraction of the dish on the ground. So that's one reason why I might use a pre-placed reward. And also for obstacle training like contacts, I'm going to I could put the reward very close to the end of the contact. So if I'm working on stopped contacts, the dog could, power into their 2-on-2 off and immediately grab the toy. But then I could start pre-placing the toy further and further away from the contact. So now they have to stop in position and wait to be released to that toy. So what was serving as a lure to get them to drive forward a little bit faster is now serving as a distraction, but also still reinforces going forward and looking ahead. If Facebook isn't working well for you, go into YouTube. And I've just included that link again. Oh, YouTube was breaking up too. Then I'm not sure. I'll see what I can do here. Bummer. Let me know if it got any better. All right. So try different things. Try Facebook, try YouTube, try shutting it all down. If you're on your phone, I often find that using my data is better than my Wi-Fi, but it just depends on where you're at and what your service provider is. Okay. And then I also use pre-placed rewards in handling, and it starts the exact same way for me. Is I usually will put the reward where it's very easy for the dog to access if they stay on the line that they're on, so that my handling cue matches the line that you're welcome, Jen, so that the reward pre-placed on the line gets the dog to match what I'm cueing. Okay, so using the pre-placed reward might begin as a lure, but then I'll start moving that pre-placed reward around, and then it does serve as a distraction even to my handling. So then all of that following the handling foundation stuff that I do from the get-go happens with all of the handling technique training. Okay. If I want to build more obstacle focused in general, I'm going to use more pre-placed rewards for those types of dogs. Does that all make sense? Okay. So then if you catch up and you have questions about pre-placed rewards, go ahead and post them. I'll make sure that I grab them. So then I also reward dogs in agility by dropping the toy on the line in front of them. And this is often how I start fading the pre-placed reward. And I think it's important that your dog is capable of you running with a toy in your hand, or running with food in your hand, or running with a food toy in your hand, and also that you can run and your dog can run with you while your instructor holds your reward. I think those two skills are super valuable. And reasons why I would choose the instructor rewarding or the handler rewarding really is just to help the handler out. It is a mechanical skill to be able to handle, mark, drop the reward in the place that you want it to be dropped in, and continue moving. So if that handler doesn't have that skill yet, I'm just taking the reward from them and doing it because it's so difficult to train everyone at the same time. But I really do want my handlers to have those skills to be able to handle and mark and drop and keep going all as one thing. All right, Nikki says YouTube is a little bit better. I'm sorry, you guys. Maybe the recording will be better. So if you miss something, go back and grab the recording, and I'm happy to answer questions later on. Okay, and Wendy says even if it does stall out, it keeps going. So there would just be a delay in what you hear and when you hear it. But just as your questions come, make sure you just put them in the chat, and I'll make sure to grab them. So dropping on the line, I tend to do in handling the most of that, dropping the toy on the line. And dropping the toy on the line, usually I'm reinforcing the dog for turning and coming back to the correct line. What's your normal blink rate? That's hilarious. I absolutely don't know. Someone's going to have to, please don't take data on that. That's just, I don't know. So dropping the reward on the line of the dog is reinforcing the dog for coming to the correct line that I want. I'm not typically rewarding obstacle skills with a drop toy on the line, but I could. It's just not usually one that I use when I'm training weeples or contacts, for instance. But you need to be able to drop the toy on the ground and keep going. I think that's the most important skill, is that when you drop the toy on the ground, you don't stop, that you continue to move as if you were continuing the course, and the dog collects the reinforcement and then catches back up to you. And I think that's important because that's what real agility looks like, is that you are going to want the dog to, like if you've just cued a tight turn, you're going to want them to slow down, collect, jump close to the bar, land close to the bar, turn around the wing, and get back to your line as quickly as you can. But you want them to get back to that line even when you're continuing to run. If you stop and reward, they're coming back to that line because you stopped. I want them coming back to the line even if I keep running forward. So when I am doing handling and I drop the reward on the line, I keep running. I drop and keep going. If someone is tossing the reward on the line for me, I mark, they toss it on the line, I keep handling as if they're not being reinforced. So that's pretty important as well. And then when we talk about, oops, Wendy says it's still breaking up. I'm sorry guys if the quality isn't great tonight. I don't know what else to do other than to swap off of this completely. I would have to go to just straight Facebook and use my phone. So let me know if you think I should do that. I can stop this and start again on just my phone. But otherwise, I'm going to keep going. Rewarding from your hand, I don't do a ton of in the context of agility. I do a lot of rewarding from my hand when I'm training obstacles or I'm training skills. But once I get to handling and sequencing and things like that, I'm not on a huge regular basis rewarding from my hand. But I will reward from my hand if my dog needs more handler focus. I will reward close to my body. I'll either have them come in for food at my side or a tug at my side, or even out of weave poles if your dog tends to shoot forward out of weave poles because they're used to a reward being thrown as they exit the weave poles, then I would balance those thoughts for that dog by rewarding from my hand out of weave poles. So there are some situations where I would choose to reward from my hand, but it's not usually my first choice. And then I want to show you guys some more, maybe more specific reward placements that are not as common or a little bit, they were kind of newer to me when I hadn't been taught to use these strategies until I just sort of tried it one day. But one of them is pre-placing the toy behind the dog for the start line. So you have a jump in front of the dog and a toy behind the dog or a bowl of food behind the dog, and they need to be able to discriminate between take the jump and take the reward behind them. And Shock I'm teaching this to Shock now because of the webinar coming up. And it's really kind of fun to see her learn in a new word for this marker cue, because I didn't expect her to get it so quickly. But that's a unique placement of reward option that I wouldn't do for stopped contacts. I don't want to reward contacts behind my dog because I don't want the dog thinking about slowing down to go behind in the context of a stopped dog walk or stopped teeter behavior. And then another thing that I do that sometimes wigs people out, and it's the way I reinforce collection for weave pole entries, is I mark, which pulls the dog out of the weave poles, and I throw the toy behind them. So those are kind of my unique ways of reinforcing things to get the dog thinking about it's not always just blast forward. Sometimes they need to be preparing to turn around. So on the start line, it keeps them more upright, little less vulture-y. And in the weave poles, they think more about collecting into the entry if there might be an opportunity that they have to flip 180 degrees to get the reinforcement behind them. Nikki says, Micah is fine with me holding the toy and someone holding it at the end, but can't do pre-place as he gets too toy focused. Is this something to work towards? I would, Nikki. I like it because I can proof things a little bit more. I can really make sure that following my handling is his first priority rather than just running to the toy. So you start really simple and you can do it without obstacles. Just have him in a stay, toy on the ground, and send him straight to the toy. And then do small curves, and you can start really close to him so your hand is right there and you can talk to him, encourage him to come with you and just do a little half circle to the toy and then increase distance. And then you're doing L shapes. So call him, so he's sitting in one spot, the toy is sitting in the other, and you're in the corner, and you call him to you, you make a turn and you send him to the toy. So you can teach them that skill pretty easily. They learn that following the handling is what earns them access to the toy, and they pick up on it pretty quick. You can also put the toy up, or the pre-placed food up, a little bit higher, so it's not as tempting on the ground. So it's not quite as accessible, but they're still having to, that they can still sort of get it. Like, they just have to put out a little bit of effort to get it off a chair, get it off the stool, but it's not quite so tempting as if it being right on the ground. I get the sense that it's going pretty terribly for everyone buffering wise, and I'm really sad about that because I don't know how to fix it. So I'm going to give you guys just a few more minutes to put a few questions in if you've made it this far. But then if you guys all want to just watch the replay and ask your questions as they come in, I will jump back in here and answer them at some point, either today or tomorrow. If you drop a treat on the line and they stop to get it and eat it, I run out of real estate to keep running while waiting for them to catch up. Okay, so that's fine. What I want is that while they are doing the thing to get to the reward, is that you are still running. Once they collect it, that repetition is now over, and you can stop running, you can play with them, you can reset for another repetition. It's not eat the cookie and then keep running the course. It's just that I want you to keep handling until they've collected the reinforcement. Okay, so the only other thing that I really need the dog to understand is when the reinforcers aren't on me. So when placement of reward is outside of the working area, outside of the ring. And that's just because that's reality. So I need them to understand that. So using that reinforcement strategy of food or toys off of your body is what they're working for when you're doing coursework or lots of things together. So that's going to be their reward in competition. Christina asked, if reward on the line, they catch up and then you play? Yep. So if I drop a toy, they scoop their toy up, they catch back up to me, we play a little bit, maybe I tug back to start again, maybe I tug to the next starting point. Same with food. If I drop food on the line, they eat it, they come back, I might give them a few more. And this is the difference too, in that I don't throw rewards for handling. I don't throw toys forward. But I understand that dogs really enjoy playing fetch with their toys as a reward. So for Shrek in particular, me dropping a Frisbee on the line is kind of like so-so, because he didn't get to chase it, right? The chasing it down and then playing tug is really a part of it for him. So I'm running along, I drop his frisbee on the line, he grabs it, he shoves it at me, we tug a little bit, and then I'll play a few games of fetch. So the fetching isn't what's reinforcing that sequence. It's just reinforcing, it's prolonging the reinforcement procedure for him so that he feels adequately paid. But it's not how I would reinforce directly the handling skills. Someone says there is a good amount of coordination to drop the toy on the line. I agree, which is why when I have students in front of me, I will often do it for them. So your dog just has to be okay with that. And I do it all the time for Graham, and he'll do it for me when we're training together. And you practice dropping the toy on the line and keep going. Practicing which hand it's going to be in, when you're going to drop it, how you're going to keep going. With rewarding from the hand, would you do that for a dog that won't come into your side and tends to think they know the course, like working rear crosses on the flat where you want the dog to turn before taking a jump so they don't slice a jump? Yes. So I think there's a couple of things here. If my dog tends to not want to be super close, then a lot of the time I'm rewarding from the hand. And there's only so much you can do to change that, but I would try my best to make sure that coming in close is highly reinforcing. And then with something as specific like rear cross on the flat where you want the dog to turn before taking the jump, dogs will learn to anticipate this very, very quickly. So I tend to use either or training for turns on the flat because they will very quickly learn what it looks like just before you turn them away from you, and they will back chain that to the point of as soon as you say their name, they assume or they're like, hey, come close to me cue, they immediately turn away because they pick it up so quickly and they anticipate that series of cues. So I will often give that, hey, come close to me cue, and then turn in a circle with the dog and not turn them away from me like a rear cross on the flat. So there's a couple of things there. Okay, so if you guys have questions about how I would reward something, I'm turning it over to you because there were no questions as I was talking, so I gave you everything I had. So give me a situation and we'll talk about what the best reinforcement strategy would be for that situation. And I'm giving it time to catch up for those that are dealing with the buffering. I would cue the toy. In what situation? I mean, in general, yes, I'm cueing when to take the toy or when to expect it to be dropped or when to pick it up off the ground. But if you have a specific situation in mind, let me know. Yeah, follow my handling and I'll cue the toy. Okay, so in that case, yes, always. I didn't used to. When I first started using uh, location specific markers, I told myself that in handling, I didn't um, I didn't need it. I could just if my motion was supporting it, if my handling took them there, they could have it. And so um, sometimes so with Smack and Shock especially, it can be really challenging for them to not take a toy because that's, for one, they were raised with no location specific markers or toy cues or anything like that. And then as I upgraded my own knowledge and communication systems, I was using marker cues for food and training, in like training skills and obstacles and things. But when I was using toys, and I would use toys primarily for them, I don't use a lot of food in their agility training. This is not what they want. Um, so then I would put the toy just where I wanted it and would cue it with my handling. And I've since progressed even more to thinking that that can muddy things up for their contacts because I'm going to be running straight at the toy if the toy is pre-placed in front of their stopped contact, and I'm going to be running straight at the toy. So that was a context that wasn't clear for them, so I went to always cueing the toy no matter what. I'm glad it's still enjoyable, Sandra. I'm really sad that it's like not as it doesn't feel as much as a discussion since there's such a delay, but I'm fine sitting here talking to myself a little bit. Wendy, other suggestions for vultures? I so this is I have different reinforcement strategies based on the quality of their sit. So I've done this with several dogs in the past, and even Smack, I'll have a toy or a reward behind the dog and a reward in front of the dog, and I will start leading out. And if their sit is really nice and upright and how I would like it to be, they get to go forward. And if their sit is forward, maybe their butt is up, their elbows are starting, like things are deteriorating, but they're still staying, they still get rewarded, but they get rewarded behind them. And it fixes all that garbage fairly quickly because they're still getting reinforced. They're staying. So I like that strategy for start lines in general so that I don't have to be naggy about the vulturing. I can still reinforce them. I can still release them. They still get to move. But when they're vulturing, going backwards isn't what they're expecting. And that, like, that it changes how they think. If they get to go forward when they're sitting upright, they will sit upright eventually. So that's my suggestion. Marianne asks, how do you decide when to switch from pre-place to drop on the line? Is it change in focus from dog skill to handler skill? A little. if it's something that I'm still working on a lot, I will keep pre-placed. And I might go back and forth. It's not like I swap from pre-placed to drop on the line and I never go back to pre-placed, because depending on where it's pre-placed, it could be a distraction or a lure. So I might, if I'm working on building my dog's obstacle focus, it's probably pre-placed as a lure. And then I'll start fading that out to dropping on the line, which means I'll ping pong. So if I'm working on pre-placed because of building obstacle focus, it's maybe pre-placed for a few times, and then I'm going to drop it on the line for one time, and then I'm going to go back to pre-placed, and then I'm going to drop it on the line, and so forth. But if I'm moving the pre-placed reward into a distracting location, then it's just gonna go away at some point, and I'm gonna let the dog go on to the next obstacle or something like that. So it does depend a little bit on what the function of the exercise is, where I reward. So if you have something more specific, let me know. Nikki says he can do it on the flat, like you said, but now he loves agility and jumps in tunnels, gets too excited for the reward. Might go back to pre-placing on one. Yeah, if they do, right? So when we train things, and Smack was like the poster child of this. When he was young, he wasn't totally sure that agility was going to be his career choice. He wasn't very excited. He was very thoughtful. We can slap a label on him and call he was slow. And so his arousal level around agility was quite low. And then as that arousal level came up, all of our skills went to crap because he didn't know how to do those things at the higher arousal level. So absolutely, if you're seeing a spike in your dog's arousal level surrounding agility, it's probably going to be a good idea to review some of those basic skills at this new arousal level and then go from there. And now they're all catching up, so I have to sit here and talk to myself. I have to say something. So I'm going to need workshop and webinar ideas for FDSA. I'm set for classes for like the next 2 years. I think, but if you have ideas that would suit well for a webinar or a workshop, I would love to hear them. But what really happens is I'll do a workshop and that'll become a 6-week class, or I have a whole bunch of classes that I want to do. But the webinars and workshops, sometimes it's tricky for me to come up with an idea. So some very specific topic that I could talk about for an hour, and go from there. This will be really boring for those watching the replay, because I basically said everything I needed to say in the first 30 minutes, and now I'm just waiting for questions to come in. I'll give you guys a few more minutes. What if your dog gets sticky on a pre-placed reward? This is a good question. I would. I would go back and really make sure that the dog is clear on when they can access the reinforcer, because typically those